Welcome to Scrum Masters Elite_UK. Today we analyze the controversy surrounding the decision to move the Springboks, All Blacks match to the United States. A story that sits at the intersection of rugby tradition and global commercialization. If you find this interesting, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out. The decision to move the fourth match between the Springboks and the All Blacks to the United States in the Greatest Rivalries series is far more than a simple change of venue. It touches the deepest layers of debate surrounding identity, core values, and the long-term direction of elite rugby, particularly for an icon such as the All Blacks. When I analyze Gregor Paul's comments, therefore, it is not merely a timely critique, but a warning bell about the growing clash between sporting tradition and commercial pressure in the era of globalization. On the surface, the argument put forward by New Zealand Rugby seems easy to understand. Rugby, despite its historic aura, is still an industry. The costs of running a national team, youth development systems, domestic competitions, and international obligations continue to rise, while traditional revenue streams from home ticket sales and domestic broadcast rights have shown signs of stagnation. In that context, exporting blockbuster matches to high-potential markets such as the United States is seen as a rational, even necessary, financial strategy to ensure the survival of the entire system. From this perspective, New Zealand is not simply being greedy, but rather attempting to adapt to the harsh realities of modern sport.
However, the issue Gregor Paul highlights, and the most controversial point, is this: when does adaptation become excessive compromise? Taking a marquee match with deep symbolic meaning in the historic rivalry between New Zealand and South Africa to Baltimore, a city with little cultural connection to rugby, makes many feel that the bond between the team and its loyal supporters is being stretched to a dangerous limit. Unlike Twickenham or even Dublin, where strong, tradition-rich rugby communities can generate an atmosphere worthy of such an occasion, Baltimore appears, in Paul's view, to be a destination chosen primarily for its profit potential. This argument becomes even more compelling when considering the human element, both fans and players. For domestic supporters, especially those who have followed the All Blacks across generations, losing the chance to watch the team play on their spiritual home ground is a loss that cannot easily be replaced. Rugby in New Zealand is not merely a sport, it is part of the national identity. When symbolically significant matches are pushed away from the communities that have nurtured and celebrated them, feelings of abandonment are hard to avoid. Paul describes this as a hurt, and from a socio-emotional perspective, that assessment is far from exaggerated. For the players, the situation is even more complex. A congested schedule, combined with 18-hour transcontinental flights immediately after a brutal run of 3 consecutive tests, inevitably raises concerns about both physical and mental well-being. Rugby is already a high-collision sport. Adding the strain of long-haul travel and time zone adjustment only increases the risk of injury and performance decline. Here, Paul is not merely criticizing a single decision, but placing it within a broader trend of increasing the number of overseas tests, a trend that may bring short-term financial gain, but carries long-term risks for performance quality. Paul's analysis sharpens further when he links scheduling to the decline and eventual dismissal of head coach Scott Robertson. While he does not place all responsibility on the fixture list, he raises a perfectly reasonable question: did having to play 60 to 63% of international matches away from home during Robertson's tenure undermine the team's ability to build stability and a winning mindset? When compared with successful predecessors, such as Graham Henry or Steve Hansen, who had significantly lower proportions of away matches early in their tenures, this difference cannot be ignored. Home fixtures provide not only competitive advantages, but also a space to reinforce confidence, identity, and the bond between the team and the nation. That said, fairness requires acknowledging that rugby faces a global paradox. Without expansion into new markets like the United States, the sport risks becoming trapped within a traditional circle, struggling to compete with more aggressively globalized sports. From the perspective of rugby's long-term global development, bringing elite teams to countries without strong rugby foundations can be seen as a strategic responsibility. The issue is not whether this should be done, but how and how often, without breaking the core value structure of the sport. It is at this point that my personal view aligns more closely with Paul's, though without completely rejecting New Zealand's argument. Choosing the United States for the fourth match against the Springboks especially amid an already overloaded schedule, shows a lack of sensitivity to symbolism and emotion. If the aim is sensible commercialization, Twickenham or Dublin, venues that combine large, knowledgeable fan bases with deep historical resonance, would clearly offer a better balance between revenue and tradition. Going too far into a market not yet ready to fully grasp the match's significance, purely to maximize profit, risks creating the impression that money has become the primary, if not the sole, driver. Ultimately, this controversy reflects a larger question facing not only New Zealand, but most leading sporting federations: how to survive and grow in a world dominated by commercial forces while preserving the soul of the sport. The All Blacks are not just a team, they are a symbol of excellence, tradition, and national pride. Every decision involving them therefore carries weight far beyond balance sheet figures. If those decisions leave fans feeling alienated, players exhausted, and results declining, then short-term profit, no matter how tempting, may never compensate for the long-term costs.
And that is the story behind the decision to take the Springboks, All Blacks match to the United States, a tension between the need for financial survival and the risk of trading away traditional rugby identity. Thank you for following Scrum Masters Elite_UK. If you value in-depth analysis of elite rugby, don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.